Welcome back, everybody. This is the September 30th AI update for the AIX Higher Ed podcast.
As with every week, we have some major themes. We'll start with the build out of the data centers, some really big advances in agentic AI, a lot with video and the emergence of synthetic realities, a little bit more on the economic impact, a couple examples of progress with universities, some new safety initiatives, which are great, and as always, at the end, our challenges.
The build. This is just continuing to grow, and we're starting to see more stories about a concern about this possibly being a bubble or circular investment. But this story about OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank adding 5 new data centers for Stargate is certainly a very big one. An investment exceeding $400 billion and aiming for 10 gigawatts of AI infrastructure by the end of 2025, which is really remarkable, and it's growing incredibly fast. Also announcing a partnership with NVIDIA for $100 billion in additional computing power.
Yeah, and Sam Altman, kind of really shortly after we finished last week's podcast, posted a blog that just said, like, hey, this is all about really the data centers. Like, we need the data in order to scale. And that's what a lot of people are talking about now. Oh, the capabilities are really increasing. We know they're here for what they can do. We know, they'll continue to grow, but the huge bottleneck may be the data centers. So I think all these companies are all in on the data. Look, they know at the very least people are going to use it to chat with fake people or whatever, right? Like there's just basically unlimited demand at this point.
Now, moving on to agentic AI and some big developments, starting with Microsoft. And they've included agent mode in some different Office apps, including Excel and Word. And people are referring to this as vibe working. I think Microsoft has even referred to it this way, where they've included agent mode in some of these applications. And it's really interesting to see how these are playing out.
Yeah, they're right there, in the Word and then the Excel. And of course, we also... the big announcement yesterday was Anthropic. Anthropic released Sonnet 4.5, and it was more agentic. And, the big emphasis on coding. Claude's kind of continuing to lead the way on coding, but they said it can code up to 30 hours simultaneously, right? And it doesn't just kind of code constantly. It makes corrections. It evaluates what it's doing. The capabilities are also increasing, but we're really seeing rapid developments. There's this group MITRE, MITR, safety research organization. And over the summer, they were saying, oh, it's going to double like every 7 months, right? So it was like, 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours. But it's obviously going a lot faster than that because we're already at 30 hours.
For it to be able to maintain that level of focus for 30 hours is remarkable, because then when you're allowing for agentic and autonomous work, it can take on whole new levels of development within coding or really any other application. If you have this in Claude Code, for instance, it's not just about coding in a traditional sense. It can take on a lot of other work, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the coming weeks with Claude Sonnet 4.5, because it takes it to another level of capabilities.
Yeah, people are saying we're going past like kind of this idea of co-pilot to, where it's more of an agent. But we also, even just today, we see continued advances in AI generated video, and the biggest drop is just this afternoon, Sora 2, and we'll play in the video here a little bit, but you can see even just in the simple screenshot. I mean, it's hard to tell that that's not a person.
1 year ago, Sora 1 redefined what was possible with moving images. Today, we're announcing the Sora app, powered by the all-new Sora 2.
It's the most powerful imagination engine ever built.
And it's packed with new features. I'll pass it to Bill for more details.
Now every video comes with sound.
I watched a lot of the footage, that they released. I didn't get a special invite, but it was really, I don't know that I wouldn't know that it wasn't real, like from a movie. So we're gonna see that. And also, I haven't had a chance to read through everything, but you can also kind of make a synthetic image of yourself and insert yourself kind of into the movie. And you see there's a lot of inserted synthetic Sam Altmans in the presentation. And the other thing, they're launching a social media network where everything is synthetic. All the videos will be synthetic. Your representation will be synthetic, right? So you just think of like TikTok, but everything is AI generated and edited. You're going to be able to edit it. You'll be able to put deep fakes of other people. So if I want to show Anand robbing a bank, they do have some safety things. They only let you reproduce people, I guess, if you have permission. I don't know how that'll all be enforced, but the idea is that you'll be able, recreate synthetic people and kind of be in this synthetic social media space.
A lot of these Sora videos, and when you see when somebody's inserted themselves into it, it's incredibly convincing. And this idea of a social app that is only AI generated video is a really different approach than what we've seen with the use of AI generated video in a lot of other social media platforms, and the way we probably have typically thought about it as supplementing other content that we have. Now it's taking the place of it, and it might be difficult to kind of get our heads around this idea of an app a social app that's only AI generated video. But when you think about inserting yourself and representing yourself, it's a lot like a doctored or edited photo. This really changes the means of interaction for people. This might be kind of the new medium for interacting with others. And if instead of taking pictures or videos of yourself, you just maybe take a picture and insert it into a video you'd like to be able to make of you at the concert or at the beach or on a trip, that's going to really change and alter our perception of reality and of each other. Really concerning to me when I think about some of the problems with social media applications already and the way that we misrepresent and overrepresent certain experiences. And if we move into an AI generated network, I think it's really problematic. But it's also really intriguing to see what OpenAI has in mind with this. There have been rumblings about them creating a social media network. This idea of it being only AI generated videos is certainly something that most did not see coming. And as Stefan mentioned, this is allowing you to deepfake your friends. And what I read is that they'll note, like if Stefan does deepfake me robbing a bank, I'll get a notification of that. And maybe that's the kind of the catch, is that deepfakes are inevitable. They're already occurring. They're getting better. At least if they're on a platform where they're being detectable and traceable, and there's some kind of a digital watermark, as there are with with Google Gemini's videos, they have a digital watermark there. Then you can tell whether or not something was a deepfake. Of course, that's not going to stop other open source platforms from developing these capabilities too.
And it's we just talked about OpenAI and Sora, that'll be the technology behind the social media platform. But Meta's been experimenting with videos, that synthetic videos that you can edit, right? So it's not just an OpenAI thing. It's something we're seeing everywhere, or at least in more than one place. And to add to it, now there's a lot of controversy over a new synthetic actress, right? Tilly Norwood. This looks like a real person. I was saying before we started the podcast, when I looked at the OpenAI Sora 2, I was saying you can't really tell. And if you look at this person, this is synthetic person, I don't think there's any real way to know. So you're talking about these new synthetic realities where we're kind of interacting with other people in these synthetic realities, and then we're going to see synthetic movies. Now, of course, the movies are all digital, right? But it was still a digital representation of an actual individual, whereas this is not a real individual. And then on top of that all, I had a chance this weekend on Suno. They released a new music generator, and you can only I stopped paying for my Suno because I didn't use it that much, but you can do a 30-second clip with the new generator, and it's really impressive, right? So we just talked about synthetic video, and the other things they're saying is the audio aligns well with the video. We didn't mention that, but it does. But now, of course, the music's going to be there, right, as well. So imagine, it's going to be you'll have like a synthetic rock concert, right? It's just a lot
of developments, yeah.
And this is a little tamer, but it's kind of along the same theme, right? That Microsoft Copilot, they're giving you AI faces that you can chat with. Instead of because they say we're going to move from just kind of the chatbot, so to speak, just being text, or you're going to just kind of have a conversation with it, and it's going to do what you need it to do. But they're saying, oh well, we found that and I guess some basic survey research that people wanted an actual like avatar type thing to text with. They added these in. I think it's kind of interesting because I watched another podcast, Simon Bolivan podcast with Mustafa Suleiman, who was saying, oh, well, in 18 months, most people are going to perceive these to be conscious. And he's so worried about that. And I don't think you're going to see these avatars as conscious. It does the more these synthetic realities are kind of real, so to speak, right? Like you were saying earlier, I think you said creating a new reality or experiencing a new reality is just going to add to that sense of, once you watch one of those movies enough time, right, with Tilly Norwood, right, you're going to think Tilly Norwood is real. And it all compounds, right? Maybe the level of synthetic experience varies in different situations and with different AIs, but it's just going to all compound to kind of creating this synthetic experience.
What's interesting about this is that when you see the controversy around an AI actress, Tilly Norwood, and it's pretty easy to understand that many people are concerned that you would just have an AI representation of an actor or actress that is taking the place of an actor. We're moving into a third path instead of just humans or just AI, but AI being used to represent humans. So if you have a deepfake of yourself, and if you're an actor and you decide you're going to have AI generate a video of yourself, you're controlling it. You're still having input, and that might be in part of the social app that OpenAI has, or it might even be in Hollywood movies. That's a really different understanding of how much of that is still representation of yourself. How much do you control it? Is it possible that it's okay for that to be something that you choose to represent yourself in that way? It really changes the dynamic of the way we interact with another person, particularly when we're only online. If you're only interacting with somebody online, you only know them through online interactions. Maybe you hear their voice if you're playing a video game, you see a video if we're on a Zoom call. Now, if it's always going to be an AI representation, how is that going to truly represent me? Am I going to really choose for it to represent me the exact way I look, or is it going to be slightly different than what I would anticipate, or what somebody else might anticipate when they're thinking about it? It really puts our interaction kind of on its ear. And if we think about McLuhan's The Message is the medium is the message, well, the medium here is artificial intelligence. So it really is about an artificial interaction. And it's going to be really intriguing and disturbing at the same time to think about how that plays out as we rely more and more on mediated experiences that are represented through artificial intelligence.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversation about that, but just to kind of reinforce it, Apple is introducing its own model, right, for image kind of understanding and generation, right? So it's just more and more places we're going to see this synthetic media.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, and Alibaba then has another one, Wan 2.5 preview, allowing users to turn photos and text prompts into videos with matching audio. This is happening on multiple platforms. And then we also see Alibaba has Qwen 3 Max, its largest, most capable AI model, with some, I believe it has multimodal capabilities. This is obviously a broader large language model, but lots of new developments along the lines of different models, not just text-based, but obviously multimodal.
Yeah, I read that this was close to ChatGPT 5. In terms of, so we kind of see, of course, all these things are, have economic implications, right? We started talking about agents and, how they kind of can perform work autonomously, or, first help us do our work, right, in Excel, in Word in a collaborative way, but also do a lot of autonomous coding. And OpenAI released, a new eval, right? We have a lot of evals for, how much math the models can do. Do they have, PhD intelligence, undergrad intelligence, different levels of math? This one really kind of starts to look at, okay, what are the economic implications of this, right? Like, what can they do in the economy? And the way they kind of looked at it was concretely, what tasks can AIs do? And they didn't really look at whole jobs, right? Now, and there is a difference, right? A job is composed of multiple tasks, right? There are some jobs that are, just incredibly repetitive, where maybe you're just doing like one task or a few tasks, right? So jobs that just do a few tasks that are really repetitive are of course the easier to automate. Those that require judgment, right, are more obviously very difficult to automate, right? So so you have this continuum, but I believe it's saying that like 41% of tasks can already be automated, right? So it is showing economic implications. And of course, we have to scale all this into society, right? Just because it can automate 41% of tasks does not mean if you walk into a business tomorrow, you're going to see 41% of those tasks automated by AI, but it shows the capabilities that are present.
What's interesting about this, and they call it GDPval because it's based on the concept of gross domestic product as an economic indicator. This is a way to bridge all of those other benchmarks that most in computer science and the AI field have become accustomed to, but most in the regular economy aren't accustomed to. And it's kind of hard to see how does the Google proof, graduate level exam, what does that mean for a task in a workplace? What's interesting about this when they worked on GDPval is that they not only break it down by individual tasks in a workplace, they then have the models produce the work to meet that task, and they also have it evaluated by human evaluators who are experts in that task. So if it's something related to a financial task, they would have accountants or people with financial backgrounds evaluating it. And they released a report based on these evaluations, looking at the evaluations, and it was a pretty honest, open report. It found that even Claude's model performed better than GPT-5 in a number of them, not only in coding but in some other areas. This is obviously an attempt by OpenAI, and really is going to be, I think, useful for most AI companies to help bridge that understanding of what AI is capable of to kind of more traditional sectors of the economy. And so they have a better sense of, if we do employ an agentic AI model here, this is what it's capable of, this is what it can do, this is how we could deploy it. It also kind of gets everybody another framework to consider how AI will be able to be used in more traditional settings. So it's a pretty good marketing tool and a good way to be able to measure the application in more practical sense.
Yeah, Eric Brynjolfsson is an economist at the Stanford High. He has this concept called artificial transformational intelligence. I wrote about this on my blog. I should have included the paper. And his idea is like, okay, well, we can argue forever whether these things are actually intelligent or how intelligent they are, but let's look at the transformational impact, right? They're having the economy. And the paper came out at about the same time as GDPval, but they didn't know about it before they wrote the larger paper, obviously. But he kind of just says like, hey, it's starting to impact, right? The economy is starting to have a transformational effect. And, what issues does this raise across society, beyond the obvious jobs? So, really, it's kind of a new area. It's something that people have theorized, right? And I think OpenAI's, with the original like definition that they agreed to with, or Microsoft's argued for, well, it has to have so large of an economic impact, right? So now we're starting to see that, and we're trying to find ways to measure it. But beyond kind of economic concerns, right? We've had a number of safety concerns, right? A lot of people like to talk about, the AI takeover, but there's a lot of kind of practical day-to-day concerns, right? We talked before on this podcast, right, about the student, whose decision to kill himself, is arguably, right? There's a court case about it, influenced by his conversation with ChatGPT, and I think that really actually kind of shook OpenAI a bit, because within the news of that coming out, they had two posts, committing to, trying to solve the problem. It's complicated, and to take action. And one of the things they wanted to do was kind of immediately offer parental controls. And so those, and they said by the end of September, and I think it was, just yesterday or the day before, the parental controls came out. So if you have a teenager, a minor child, you can connect their ChatGPT account to your own account, and you can monitor it.
Now, they did make it very clear that it wouldn't allow the parent to see the individual chats.
Right.
So there's still some privacy, but it would alert the parent if there was any dangerous content that was being referenced within the chats. So a good way to kind of find a balance so that the student, the teen, would still have some privacy, but that there's still a safety network there, and certainly deploying the model to be able to monitor those chats, to be able to look for dangerous interactions or dangerous language or references, and then incorporating the parent resource page and the parental controls is an important next step.
And they also trying to take, especially with all this new synthetic media generation, trying to take steps to combat online child exploitation and abuse, because people say, there's already images out there of kind of abused and exploited children, unfortunately. So they're trying to prevent that, and these are synthetic images, but nonetheless, have the same effect.
There was also news out of California with a new bill that was passed and signed by the governor, Transparency and Frontier Artificial Intelligence Act, that just went into effect in the last day or so. And this is, only one of many different acts that have gone into effect in different states across the country. We're going to see this become a major issue in the midterm elections, as the AI companies have already devoted. I think Andreessen Horowitz has said they've set aside almost $200 million to be able to use for lobbying and to be able to support candidates that will be opposed to state level regulation, because they're really worried about a patchwork of different kinds of regulations and how they're going to be able to meet it. That's going to be an ongoing issue. For this bill in particular, what they were looking for is more transparency for the companies to have to disclose when there are dangerous actions taken by models, to allow for some accountability. It offered better protections for whistleblowers from those companies if they know of something dangerous. And so when we're thinking about agentic actions that are taken by some of the models, if that agentic model is taking action that is dangerous or criminal in some way, this would then hold the companies responsible. They would have to be able to refer this to the state government. And having it come in California is obviously very important, because it's the home of a number of these companies. And that's also, there's been a model for California action leading to nationwide regulations in other industries. So certainly not the last regulation that we're going to see in the states. They are worried about it happening other places. And as I said, it's going to be a major issue in the midterm elections. Now, moving on to software and models and some other developments that have been happening, and starting off with ChatGPT Pulse.
It's a thing, another one I haven't tried. It might be in my account, but I haven't had a chance to use it yet. Basically, it's proactive, right? So we think of kind of our interactions with AI as like, especially originally, it's like, we'll go ask it a question, right? And then everyone said, well, don't just ask it a question, have a conversation with it and follow up, right? And ask for details and clarify things, just as if you were interacting with the person. But this kind of takes it to the next level, and it's like, okay, well, I know what your interests are, right? I know what you might be researching, and it'll kind of assemble research reports that look like cards, like kind of image cards with resources on those topics, right? I remember reading even a year ago, somebody said, oh, well, when your professor emails out the, your paper assignment, the AI will just know you have the paper due, and it'll go write the paper for you. You won't even have to ask. But it's not that sophisticated yet. But that's kind of the idea behind it. It kind of figures out what you need, what you're interested in, and then generates a report for you.
It's a natural extension of the memory feature that OpenAI has incorporated, and I've noticed more of this when I'm having an interaction in a new chat. It'll bring in some of those memory functions. It'll remember specifics of other projects that I'm making without me having to even reference it. As an extension of that memory feature, what's also interesting about this is that I haven't heard a lot of people reference it, but when you're thinking about limited compute, this is something that's produced overnight when you're going to have less demand on that compute. So it's a really clever way of making sure they can get best use of the data centers when there probably is lower demand overnight, to have this ready for users at the beginning of the next day. It introduces the idea of an assistant. So you have this assistant based on your memory and looking for interactions to say, by the way, I found this article and these resources based on something that you were looking at or you were thinking about this trip or this research project. We're going to see more and more of this. It's a really interesting and clever way to take a step forward with the idea of an AI assistant without overburdening a lot of the data centers, and probably be able to make use of the lower demand at night. And here's a little bit more showing an example of this. And I've heard examples of, if you're thinking about a trip you might take with your family, and when it finds new articles, it'll be able to bring that up, or maybe even tell you about a new deal that's available. And that gets us into the idea of shopping. And this is something OpenAI has incorporated, where it allows instant checkout directly in the chat. So imagine if you have GPT Pulse giving you an idea saying, hey, I know that you were planning on taking your family to Bali. We found a really great deal for air tickets. Would you like to buy them? And now what they've allowed is this instant checkout. So it's a new agentic commerce protocol, so that you don't even have to leave the chat to be able to make that purchase. And this is a great way for OpenAI to keep you on the platform, to be able to incorporate purchases. And you can see this is going to expand, obviously, in a number of different directions.
And then, of course, we continue to see more developments in robotics. Robotics are getting very sophisticated. Gemini has a new robotics model, 1.5, to bring agents, into the physical world and to be able to reason about their worlds. The one example, you can watch the video. It's great. We have a little bit of it playing here of it's able to pick out like different, like not just the laundry, but the red towel or the white towel, right? So kind of its ability to kind of understand, so to speak. I'll use it loosely without starting a debate. The world that it's in, and to act on it. And of course, then there's this thing about the hands, right? You see the hands getting more complicated because humans have many. Some people say hundreds of thousands or millions of sensors on their hands. So we'll see how far that advance can go, but it's definitely a whole new level. And then there was something that came out last week called Skilled. And Skilled, I think, was trained on about 100,000 hours of video training in a very short period of time. Now, what's more interesting, okay, it was trained on a lot of things, but what they're seeing is an emergent property, right? Something comes from the training is that they're able to do things that they weren't trained on. That the robots, so in this case, what they do is they cut off part of the dog's leg, and then the dog just kind of starts walking on three legs, even though that wasn't in any of the training data. They also add, there's another segment of this video where they add kind of a layer of legs, like kind of the dog on stilts, and the dog figures it out, walks around. They put a bunch of weight on the dog, and the dog figures out and walks around, even though that wasn't in any of the training data. So the robots are starting to be able to learn in real time and adjust based to new situations based on previous training data, which is obviously an important ingredient of artificial general intelligence. You're generalizing from one thing to the other.
Now, thinking about some of the new developments in research, and this is really an extension of what Stefan was just talking about with the robotics. This new study claims that you can have just a limited number, maybe even 78 training examples, and you can use that to build autonomous agents. And the idea is that if you have this number of training examples, then you can build more superior autonomous agents and really can kind of start to extrapolate from the content that you have in the training.
And here we just say, the other thing with the models is not, it's kind of related to the agents, but just that these models are getting like really intelligent, right? So they're able to do more things. And I kind of started experiencing this, not that long ago, maybe a few months ago, where I was thinking, oh, these things are doing things that I just don't know how to do, right? And some of it, it's like, okay, well, if I had a PhD in this or that, I'd be able to do it. But what I've kind of started to realize is that they're just really able to complete these PhD related tasks quite well. Also, if you kind of just looked on LinkedIn or you see these things, I see these jobs pop up all the time just because of where my interests are on LinkedIn. But they're hiring people with PhDs now to train the models, right? So they're hiring like physicists, medical doctors, chemists. They used to initially they just hired people, right, in developing countries. It caused kind of a lot of controversy to kind of use basically just human reinforcement learning to just to get the kind of the bad stuff out of the models, the stuff you didn't want the models to say or people to do. Then they started hiring people. Oh, you know English, or you're an English teacher. Like, we want the models to have proper grammar and proper expression. And there was actually a thing recently at XAI, Mus AI. They fired a lot of those people because they don't need to train the models to do that anymore. And now they're hiring people with PhD. So, but they're saying, okay, now the models are even starting to be able to kind of go beyond that level, right? So we're starting to see, the model intelligence in some ways exceed human intelligence. Or somebody said too, well, if you're a doctor with 30 years of experience, you really want to come in and train an AI model that, is going to replace you. That's one thing I thought about with all these jobs, when I saw them, they didn't pay very much. They're like $25, $30 an hour to come train an AI model on, grammar or expression. And it's like, okay, well, you get $25 or $30 an hour, but if that is your specialty, right? If you're a grad student or an English professor, they hiring English professors for a while. You're kind of training yourself to a degree out of a job.
Now, moving on to some developments and a couple of new developments in universities and what's happening in higher ed. Let Stefan talk a little bit about this and what's happening at Iona University.
Yeah, somebody posted this earlier today on LinkedIn, and I used to be up in that area too. It's kind of where he's from. There's a university there, Iona, and they've kind of done a lot of great things with AI to build some to have some people who are the kind of go-to people that you can go and ask, to have some students who are involved in supporting the training, to have a physical location on campus, to really just kind of share out, develop, because everybody learns, different things, different applications, different uses. People are playing with different tools and different models and different applications, but just kind of a community-wide, across the university approach to kind of learning and developing knowledge about AI.
Now, getting to, I think, our final category and some challenges that are occurring in dealing with AI.
And it's really, I mean, we always talk about the the same one. Accenture, they just laid off. They are trying to train people to learn to use AI, but it's hard to tell, right? When these companies are laying off, there's a lot of things obviously going on in the economy right now. There may be some things that a person had a job, as I was saying earlier, where maybe they did 2 or 3 tasks, and those are all replaceable by AI, and they might not need as many people, or it might just be trying to cut back for economics reasons, but they are trying to train people, and they're saying like, hey, you don't learn how to use the AI, we're only going to be able to keep you for so long. And I know we kind of always end here, and it seems a little pessimistic, but the reason I like to bring it up is that I mean that is a downside of AI. Everyone agrees that this is going to cause significant job dislocation, at least in the short term. And it's really a question of how we respond to it. But if we just keep kind of pretending it's not going to happen, right, or that we're all going to have the same jobs we've always had, or that people will generally, then we're not going to take the kind of those proactive measures to learn ourselves, like how to use these tools and to help our students.
Yeah, I think almost everybody has reached an understanding that, of course, AI is disruptive to the economy. It's going to disrupt most jobs, but where there's still some debate as to what that means for some of those jobs going forward. I was in a conference in Europe this week, and there was a good discussion on the panel that I was on about what does it mean even for developers, and does it mean that if you have AIs developing much further, that if you have a team of a dozen developers, you're going to fire most of them? And most of the answers were no, we're probably going to end up hiring more, but we have to make sure we're hiring developers that are able to use the tools to be that much more productive, because there will be that much more work to do as it increases the capabilities. Accenture's example here is a really important one. They have hundreds of thousands of employees, so 11,000 employees is a lot, but it's not a huge percentage of their overall employee base. What they're really sending as a message is that there's no room really in most of the companies, especially those that are really forward thinking, for somebody to stick with a traditional job and not be ready to transition into how to deploy AI to do that job in a more forward thinking way. That's what we need to think about for our students. We have to make sure that they aren't being trained for traditional jobs that were pre-AI. We need to be able to teach them how to get ready for those jobs that have a good traditional understanding, but how they can use AI in responsible and effective ways in those jobs. So as Stefan's saying, I think there's a really good positive message here. There's some optimism that if we can teach our students how to develop these skills, how we can equip them with the skill set and the experience and a good portfolio of what they've been able to generate with AI on their own, they're going to be ready to figure out how to ride that wave in the transformation of what the job is going to look like in the future. And it's going to be different. It's necessarily going to be different in pretty much every sector of the economy. But there still will be jobs, at least for a while. And that's the hope. Well, I think that concludes this week's AI update. Thanks, Stefan. I appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing what happens in the next week.
Yeah, great conversation. Thank
Great,
you.
thanks.